Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, and today's video will be covering a new Nintendo Switch eShop sale and 10 games under $10 worth buying, so let's get into it. Now the first game on today's list is Last Beat Enhanced. And this is a retro style beat 'em up that you can play with local co-op, and the story is pretty basic, but you're playing as a bunch of heroes taking on evil gangs that have overthrown the city, and you'll fight your way through many levels in this challenging beat 'em up. Now there's several playable characters that you can choose from. You'll start off with just 2, but you can unlock more as you progress through the game, and each one has their own unique strengths and weaknesses, or one might be faster or stronger, whatever the case might be. The game has multiple endings depending on who you beat it with, and you can unlock power-ups along the way as you defeat enemies. It has a cool combo system where the more enemies in a row you hit without being hit, the more money you earn, which you can really rack up to spend on upgrades. The game is really challenging though, as you only start with 1 life, and the only way to gain more lives is to spend 3 grand each time you die to revive your character. Something to note too is there are power-ups eventually when you can buy things, but they are really expensive, and they don't seem to be permanent, so definitely be mindful of when you buy those and how you want to utilize those. The challenge of the game is pretty high. You're definitely going to die a lot in the first couple of stages, until you get the hang of things. But I actually like that element where it is a little bit tougher and really reminded me of those classic beat 'em up games that posed quite a challenge. So if you're looking for a new retro style beat 'em up, this is a great one to check out. Alright, the next game on today's list is Super Cyborg. Now this is a retro inspired run and gun shooter, highly inspired by the classic Contra series, and you play as an elite battle cyborg that's sent to take out a new alien threat that's threatening humanity. And so you'll shoot your way through 7 levels with intense action platforming. Most of the levels are going to be side-scrolling action platforming, but there are some top-down levels as well, similar to the Contra series where you'll jump back and forth between those. It is pretty challenging where it's a one-hit kill scenario. But there are checkpoints throughout the game, so when you finish a stage, you can replay the next stage if you happen to die. And even on some of the later, longer levels, there's checkpoints throughout the level as well. So it's a little forgiving in that sense, but it is still really challenging at the same time. There's a bunch of different weapons you'll find throughout the game. It has an auto shoot button where you can just hold the button down to attack instead of having to repeatedly mash the button, which is nice. And there's even a power-up option for your weapons to unleash a special attack. So if you like retro style run and gun shooters and action platformers, this could be a great one to pick up. Alright, the next game on today's list is Dungeonoid. Now there's not a ton to say about the story of this game, as it's more of a puzzle game mixed with an RPG. So it's kind of a cool concept where it takes that brick-breaking formula from Arkanoid, but then adds in a twist with the RPG elements, as well as some additional puzzle elements on each level. So in typical fashion, you'll be breaking bricks around the stage with your paddle, but the goal is often to find the escape to the next level of the dungeon. And so this could require you to find keys, open treasures, and find hidden doors on the different levels. Now another cool factor again is that it has that RPG element to it, so you'll be able to eventually upgrade elements of your player, like having more health and increasing your power and much more. So again, it is still that arcade style puzzle game like Brick Breaker and Arkanoid, but the new RPG elements added to the game adds a unique twist to it. And so if you like this style of arcade puzzle games, could definitely be worth checking out. Alright, the next game on today's list is Legion of Doom. And so this is another game capitalizing on the Vampire Survivors craze. And so it's a survival style game where you have 5 playable characters you can choose from, each with their own unique play style and abilities that you can take on the waves of challenging enemies. And so you've got things like an alchemist, a rogue, a priest, a necromancer, and more. And each one of these characters have their own unique weapon builds, which is a little bit different than its predecessor Vampire Survivors, where everybody kind of had the same weapons that they used. They definitely act very similar in this game, but they do have a little bit different build for each character, which is cool. There's also sort of these blessings slash curses that you can get, where they give you one set of stat boosts, but also a debuff at the same time. So you can juggle that as well. And similar to games like Vampire Survivors, you'll earn the ability to upgrade your stats in a roguelike fashion, which can help you progress further throughout the game. There's not as many levels as, say, a Vampire Survivors, and a lot less characters, but there are some new additional features, like the unique character build-out, traps and totems that you can set for enemies to either heal your character or trap and hurt enemies. There's even a local 2-player co-op option. So while you're waiting for Vampire Survivors to potentially come to Switch, or you're looking for another game in that similar playstyle, this one's definitely worth looking into. Alright, the next game on today's list is Savage Halloween. And so this game is a retro-inspired action platformer shooter game. And so the general story is that every year all these demons and monsters gather for Halloween and kind of have their celebration and their day in the sun, or maybe their day in the moon in this case. But they don't want to go back to the netherworld after their special day. And a vampire overlord seals the entrance to the netherworld, and all the hellish demons and monsters are stuck on Earth. And you can play as several different Halloween-themed characters, all with the mission of reopening that gate and sending the demons and monsters back to the netherworld. And so it definitely is this classic action platforming. The graphic style is retro as well. The game isn't super complex, but it is definitely challenging. You have a bunch of different weapon types you can use and ammo types you'll find throughout the game, which will switch up your gameplay and strategy. There's challenging bosses you'll face off against, and there's even some special levels thrown in the mix, sort of like a space shooter and much more, to switch up the variety and keep you on your toes. If you like classic retro arcade action platforming shooter games that definitely have a high challenge as well, I think you'll like this game. Alright, the next game on today's list is Arrieta of Spirits. Now this is a retro-inspired action-adventure game, very similar to the Game Boy Advance titles of the Legend of Zelda series. So it does have that top-down perspective, exploration, and challenging puzzles and bosses throughout the game, with that action-style combat similar to the Legend of Zelda. Now the game features a heartfelt story where you play as Arrieta, a young girl, as she travels with her family to their family cabin, which is more of a tradition, but usually they're bringing their grandma along. But unfortunately she recently passed, so now the family's there just trying to get things in order. And so it is a bit of a sad storyline, but at this trip to the cabin, Arrieta will learn that she has sort of a go-between ability between the living world and the spirit world. And this sets her off on a crazy adventure, full of fun combat, exploration, and really fun gameplay. So if you like classic adventure games like The Legend of Zelda and looking for a fun, simplistic version of that, this could definitely be a game worth playing. Alright, the next game on today's list is Battle Axe. And so this game is an arcade-style top-down hack-and-slash adventure similar to classic games like Gauntlet. And so you'll play as different heroes that are taking on an evil sorceress that has been demanding the villagers' sacrifices for many, many years, and you're here to stop her. And so as I mentioned, there's 3 different hero types that you can play as. Each one has their own unique skill set and play style, but each one of these characters will really have a close-up attack, a dashing melee attack, and a projectile attack. There's multiple levels you'll play through, taking on hordes of enemies, and challenging bosses as well. You'll collect gold along the way, and in between levels you'll be able to visit a merchant to buy some power-ups like healing your character or items that can do damage to enemies. The game definitely has an arcadey feel to it, and so if you enjoy those retro-like games like Gauntlet and other top-down hack-and-slash adventures, I'd recommend checking this one out. Alright, the next game on today's list is Casa Mauritia. Now I probably butchered that name, so I apologize in advance, but this game is a super addicting roguelike deck building game. Similar to games like Slay the Spire, which is definitely one of my favorite deck building games, but this time you play as different characters like a monk, samurai, ninja, and more, and you'll be taking on different monsters and enemies as you travel across the land. And so again, each one of these playable characters has their own unique deck and play style that you'll need to figure out and master throughout this challenging game. Now if you're not familiar with deck building games, it's a cool concept where you start with a base deck of cards. They're usually rather weak, but they'll grant your player different abilities like guarding and attacking, maybe healing your character, other things to power them up as well. And then you'll face off against monsters in turn-based battles. And so you'll go back and forth, but you'll be able to see what the next upcoming attack the monsters are going to do. So you'll really need to strategize and plan accordingly which cards you play, because you'll only be able to play so many cards based on the energy that you have available. So there's definitely a strategic element to it, and each battle will really put you to the test. But it has that roguelike element as well, because once you get back to the map, you'll be able to choose from a variety of branching paths. Some of them will be regular monster fights, other ones will be mini bosses, and some of them will be rest areas where you can camp out and either heal your character or upgrade some of your base cards. You'll also find gold after battles that you can go to the shop and buy new cards to add to your deck. And there's also a talent grid, which is kind of like the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X, where there's a bunch of different options you can choose from, and you'll earn talent points throughout the game as well. And you can give your character a custom build, powering up different elements. And how these power up will really depend on the playstyle you're going for, the deck you're building, and really the overall strategy you have for your character. The game is definitely challenging, but it's a lot of fun. The storyline isn't really in depth, so don't go into it looking for a massive great story, but I think the addicting gameplay really more than makes up for it. So if you're looking for a new, fun, challenging deck building game, similar to games like Slay the Spire, I definitely recommend it. Alright, the next game on today's list is Legend of Keepers: Career of a Dungeon Manager. So it's kind of a unique title, but it's also a unique game. And so this is a roguelike turn-based RPG, kind of meets tower defense game. And so the general concept is that you're playing as a dungeon manager in kind of the evil corporate America of monsters, and your goal is to defeat oncoming heroes throughout your dungeons. And so again, it is kind of that roguelike experience where you'll have different options, sort of like a choose your own adventure for your manager, where you can choose kind of different quests to go on to power up your team. And then you'll also be able to choose the difficulty level of the heroes you face off against. So again, weaker heroes might be easier and let you progress further in the game, but then harder heroes are going to give you better rewards for your team. So it is that roguelike experience. So when you take on the heroes, it turns into a more of a turn-based battle system, and it'll pit your team of monsters against the team of heroes, all using their own unique abilities against each other, with your goal of taking out the hero team. Now, if the hero team does make it through all the monsters, they'll actually take on you as the dungeon manager, and you'll be able to unleash your full power against them as well. Now, when you die, you're reset back to the beginning, but any of the power-ups you've made to your dungeon manager along the way stick around through later playthroughs. So while your team of monsters may have died, you're still powering up over time, which can allow you to progress further throughout the game. It's a cool, unique twist on the roguelike genre, and it's definitely fun getting to play as the bad guys once in a while. And so if you like roguelike turn-based RPGs, this could definitely be one worth checking out. Alright, the final game on today's list is Street Cleaner the video game. Now the game itself is kind of a unique, twisty concept, where it's a retro-inspired action platformer, similar to games like Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden, but the overall story is kind of an 80s movie setting, but it's based on a fake movie that never existed. And so in this fictitious 80s movie, you play as the hero taking on the massive criminal underworld in the city, and so you'll challenge them throughout many action platforming levels with your trusty baseball bat, a gun, and a powerful jump kick. And so the game itself is pretty challenging, similar to retro classic action platformers. So definitely understand that. You'll probably have a difficult time as you're just getting started with it. But it does a great job with the classic retro graphics. It has awesome 80s synth music with it as well. And again, as I mentioned, if you like classic platformers like Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden, I think you'll enjoy this game as well. But again, that wraps up our list of 10 new Nintendo Switch eShop sale games under $10 worth buying. Let me know in the comments below if you'll be picking up any of these games, or if you've played any of these games so far, or if there's other great games under $10 I missed. Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button, as it really helps out the channel. And if you do like videos like this on video games, board games, and everything nerdy, be sure to check out one of our other videos here. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out, and also updates of new sale videos that come out, so you don't miss out on any great deals in future sales. But with that said, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.